Welcome back to Reseller BS. This is episode 2, and today we are talking about something that nobody officially teaches, but everyone is somehow expected to understand the unspoken rules of reselling. Not the platform rules, not the written guidelines, not the terms of service. I'm talking about the invisible social rules that exist inside reseller communities, live selling spaces, buy sell groups, and marketplaces. Because here's the truth reselling isn't just a business model, it's a social ecosystem. And like any ecosystem, it develops its own culture, expectations, and boundaries over time, even if nobody writes them down. When most people start reselling, they think it's simple list items, go live, make sales. But what they don't realize is that they're stepping into a community that already has established norms. And these norms were not created overnight, they have evolved through the years of live shows, online marketplaces, Facebook groups, whatnot streams, and seller interactions. Humans naturally create unwritten rules in shared spaces. It's actually a psychological survival mechanism. When people operate in repeated environment, like reseller platforms, they begin to form expectations about what is respectful behavior and what is not. Even those expectations are never formally stated. That's where confusion starts for new sellers. No one ever hands you a manual that says, here's what will get you respected. Here's what will get you side eyed. Here's what will get you damage to your reputation. You just have to learn over time or the hard way. One of the biggest unspoken rules in reselling is respecting someone else's selling space. This especially applies to live shows. If a seller is hosting a live show, that is their environment, their audience, their time, their effort, their business. So when someone comes into that space and promotes their show, side sells in the DMs, or tries to redirect buyers elsewhere, it creates tension. Not always publicly, but definitely socially. And this is where things get interesting because technically someone might say, well, it's like a flea market. And logically, that sounds reasonable. But socially, it feels like setting up a booth inside someone else's booth. That's why so many sellers create show notes and boundaries. Not to be dramatic, not to be controlling, but to protect the environment that they have built. Now, let's talk about something that almost every experienced seller has encountered at some point side selling in the DMs during live shows. This is one of the most controversial unspoken topics in the reseller world because it often happens quietly, behind the scenes, out of public view. And new sellers sometimes don't even realize it's considered disrespectful. From a purely transactional mindset, someone might think, I'm just offering a deal. But from a community perspective, it can be seen as undermining the host. And that perception matters more than intent in social spaces. Reseller communities operate heavily on reputation, memory. People remember patterns, not just actions. Another major unspoken rule don't price shame publicly. Reselling is not a one size fits all business. Different sellers have different sourcing costs, different overhead, different niches, and different business models. So when someone publicly criticizes another seller's prices, it often creates unnecessary division. It shifts the focus from business to ego. And ironically, it rarely benefits buyers long term. It just fuels drama and distrust within the community. Here's a nuanced truth that doesn't get talked about enough. Many unspoken rule conflicts happen when new sellers enter established places. Not because they're bad, not because they're disrespectful, but because they simply don't know the cultural expectations yet. And that learning curve can be steep, especially in live selling environments where everything happens in real time. It's like entering a social gathering where everyone understands that vibe except you. And instead of someone handing you a guidebook, you're expected to observe and adapt. That can feel confusing, intimidating, or even unfair, but it's also part of how communities maintain balance. One thing I've noticed recently is that boundaries are often misinterpreted as negativity. If a seller sets rules for their show, posts the guidelines, or protects their space, some people immediately view it as being harsh. But boundaries are not attacks. This is structure. And structure is what allows communities to function without chaos. Imagine a buy sell group with zero posting rules, zero moderation, zero etiquette expectations. It would collapse into spam, scams, and disorder almost instantly. Rules, unspoken, spoken, either way, they are creating stability. At the end of the day, the unspoken rules of reselling aren't about control. They're about coexistence. Different sellers run their businesses differently. Different communities have different cultures. Different platforms have different expectations. And none of these systems are perfect. But understanding the invisible etiquette of reseller spaces can save you from unnecessary drama, misunderstandings, and social friction. Because success in reselling isn't just about what you sell, it's about how you operate within the community around you. Episode 1 talked about views versus income. Episode 2 is about culture versus behavior. And honestly, both matter more than most realize. This has been Reseller BS, where we talk about the real side of reselling, the part that doesn't show up in your highlight reels.